All right, buckle up, because we're diving into the bureaucratic abyss to talk about the Federal Agency Rule of 1975. Don't worry, it's not as boring as it sounds. Well, maybe it is. But this rule was a big deal because it was all about control. Who has it, who wants it, and who gets to throw it around like a hot potato. Imagine a giant, faceless bureaucracy. Now imagine that bureaucracy is in charge of, well, something important. We don't know what, because the specifics are less important than the general idea here. The point is, this rule was designed to create an agency, a group of people, to oversee that something important. Why? Because apparently we can't just trust things to run themselves. The 1975 rule was all about setting up this agency, giving it a purpose and figuring out who gets to call the shots. We're talking org charts, people. Exciting stuff. But hey, this is the government we're talking about. Nothing is ever simple. So there you have it, the Federal Agency Rule of 1975, a thrilling saga of bureaucratic maneuvering. Okay, maybe not thrilling, but important, yeah? We can go with important. Stay tuned as we unpack this thing further, because things are about to get marginally less boring. Maybe. Now, before we go any further, let's decode some of the jargon, because this rule is full of it. We're talking words like agency, jurisdiction, delegation, words that make your eyes glaze over faster than a Krispy Kreme donut. First off, agency. No, we're not talking about the CIA or those dudes who represent actors. In this context, an agency is just a fancy word for a group of people the government puts in charge of something. Think of it like a committee, but with more paperwork, and probably less pizza. Then there's jurisdiction. Basically, it means who gets to boss who around. The agency's jurisdiction was limited to that something important we talked about earlier. They couldn't just go around meddling in other government business. Well, they probably could, but this rule was designed to at least give the appearance of boundaries. And finally, delegation. Remember that game we used to play as kids where we passed the buck? Delegation is kind of like that. It's the power to say, not my problem, you deal with it. Except instead of a smelly old buck, you're passing off responsibility. And hopefully, it's to someone who knows what they're doing. So, who were these mysterious figures tasked with overseeing something important? Well, the Federal Agency Rule of 1975 laid out a very specific and probably very boring structure for the agency. Think of it like the agency's DNA, except instead of determining hair colour and eye colour, it determined things like, well, who knows what it determined? There was probably a chairman or a director, because every good bureaucracy needs a leader. Someone to sit at the big desk, look important, and delegate responsibility to everyone else. And of course there were members, lots and lots of members, probably with different titles and areas of expertise. The point is, the rule was very specific about how the agency was supposed to be set up. Because if there's one thing bureaucrats love more than acronyms, it's clearly defined hierarchies. It's all about order and control, people. Section 4. The power of the agency. Now, let's talk Turkey. What could this agency actually do? Well, according to the Federal Agency Rule of 1975, they had a lot of power. But like a teenager with a learner's permit, their power came with a lot of rules and restrictions. For starters, they could make rules. Lots and lots of rules. Rules about something important, of course. Because what's a bureaucracy without the power to regulate every last detail of our lives? Don't worry, these rules probably went through a rigorous, mind-numbingly dull process of public comment and review before they were implemented. The agency also had the power to enforce those rules. They could investigate violations, hold hearings, and even issue fines. Think of them like the hall monitors of the federal government, but with slightly higher stakes. But here's the kicker. The agency's powers were limited by the law. They couldn't just go around doing whatever they wanted. They had to operate within the boundaries set by Congress, which, let's face it, is probably for the best. Because as we all know, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And nobody wants to see what happens when a bureaucrat goes rogue. Section 5, the end of the line and what it all meant. And so the Federal Agency Rule of 1975 rode off into the sunset. Wait, what? You're telling me this riveting tale of bureaucracy has an ending? Oh, it gets better. The rule was eventually repealed. That's right, it's gone, vanished, erased from the annals of history. Okay, maybe not erased, but it's definitely not in effect anymore. Why? Well, who knows? Maybe the agency fulfilled its purpose. Maybe it became too powerful for its own good. Or maybe, just maybe, someone in Congress realized that nobody actually knew what the heck this agency was doing in the first place. Whatever the reason,